The snow was falling so hard that night it seemed to erase the entire world. I stood on the porch, barefoot, clutching my coat around my shoulders while my husband stared at me with eyes I barely recognized. Behind him stood his 17-year-old son, Ethan, tears running down his face as he pointed directly at me. "She did it," he shouted. "She stole Mom's jewelry and tried to sell it." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. "You heard him," my husband, Daniel, growled. "Don't lie to me." I looked from one face to the other, waiting for someone to laugh and admit this was some terrible misunderstanding. No one did. "Daniel, I would never." "Enough." The force of his voice made me flinch. For 6 years I had helped raise Ethan after his mother died. I drove him to school, stayed up through fevers, attended soccer games, celebrated birthdays, and comforted him through nightmares. I loved him as if he were my own son. And now he was looking at me as though I were a criminal. "Search her bag," Ethan said. Daniel grabbed my purse and dumped everything onto the floor. Keys. Lipstick. Wallet. And then a velvet jewelry box. My blood turned cold. "No," I whispered. "No, that's impossible." Daniel opened it. Inside was his late wife's diamond necklace. The room fell silent. I had never even touched that necklace. "Explain this," Daniel said. "I can't. I've never seen it before." Ethan began crying harder. "She told me Dad loved her more than Mom," he sobbed. "She said Mom was gone and nobody cared anymore." The accusation hit even harder than the necklace. "Ethan, why are you saying this?" His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. And in that moment I saw something strange. Not pain. Not fear. Guilt. But Daniel didn't notice. He only saw a grieving son. The next few minutes happened like a nightmare. Daniel screamed. I pleaded. Ethan cried. And then Daniel grabbed my arm, dragged me outside, and shoved me onto the snow-covered ground. The freezing wind stole my breath. "Get out," he said. "Daniel, listen to me. I never want to see you again." The front door slammed. I sat there in the snow, shaking uncontrollably. The house I had called home for 6 years stood before me. And suddenly it wasn't mine anymore. I walked nearly 2 miles through the storm before collapsing onto a bench near a gas station. My fingers were numb. My face burned from the cold. I honestly thought I might die there. Then a truck pulled up. An older woman stepped out. "Dear God," she gasped. Within minutes she had wrapped me in blankets and taken me to her home. Her name was Margaret. A retired nurse. A stranger. The first person to show me kindness that night. When she learned what had happened, she stared at me in disbelief. "Your husband threw you into a snowstorm because of an accusation? He believes his son. Do you think the boy is lying?" I hesitated. Then I remembered the guilt in Ethan's eyes. "Yes." Margaret nodded. "Then the truth has a way of coming out." I wished I believed her. 3 days later I was served divorce papers. Daniel moved fast. Painfully fast. As if 6 years together meant nothing. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors avoided me. Apparently Ethan had told everyone I had stolen family heirlooms for gambling debts. I didn't even gamble. The lies spread faster than truth ever could. Weeks passed. Then months. I found a small apartment and started rebuilding my life. Some nights I cried until sunrise. Other nights I stared at old photos wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The worst part wasn't losing Daniel. It was losing Ethan. Because despite everything, I still loved him. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Hello? Silence. Then a shaky voice. Sarah? My heart froze. Ethan? He sounded different. Older. Broken. I need to see you. We met at a coffee shop the next day. The moment I saw him, I knew something was wrong. His eyes were red. His hands trembled. He sat down and couldn't look at me. Finally he whispered. I'm sorry. My chest tightened. For what? Tears filled his eyes. For everything. The truth came pouring out. Months earlier Ethan had begun hanging out with older boys. One of them convinced him to start stealing expensive items from homes and selling them online. At first it was small things. Then larger items. Eventually he stole his mother's necklace from a safe. But before he could sell it, Daniel discovered it missing. Panicked, Ethan hid it in my purse and blamed me. He thought Daniel would simply get angry. He never imagined it would destroy my life. When he finished speaking, he was sobbing. I didn't know how to stop the lie. I couldn't speak. Years of pain crashed over me all at once. Do you know what happened to me? I asked quietly. He nodded. And I still did nothing. The guilt on his face was unbearable. I told Dad everything yesterday. I blinked. You what? He didn't believe me at first. Then I showed him messages from the boys. I showed him everything. My heart pounded. What did he say? Ethan looked away. He cried. That night my phone rang again. Daniel. The man who had destroyed my life. I nearly didn't answer. But eventually I did. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then I heard him break down. Sarah, he whispered. I was wrong. Years of love. Months of betrayal. And now 3 words. I was wrong. He begged to meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next day he arrived carrying a folder. The moment he saw me, tears filled his eyes. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, I replied. You don't. The honesty stunned him. He nodded slowly. I know. He handed me the folder. Inside were documents. He had stopped the divorce. Transferred ownership of the house into my name. Created a trust fund for me using a large portion of his savings. I stared at him. What is this? A beginning. You think money fixes this? No. His voice cracked. I know it doesn't. Then he said something I never expected. When I threw you into that snow, I wasn't protecting my son. I remained silent. I was protecting myself. I frowned. What does that mean? Daniel looked down. Because deep inside I knew something didn't make sense. The room felt suddenly still. But believing Ethan was easier than questioning him. He swallowed hard. And if I admitted he could do something terrible, then I'd have to admit I'd failed as a father. For the first time, I saw the full truth. This hadn't only been about lies. It had been about fear. Fear had cost all of us everything. Daniel spent the next several months trying to make things right. Not demanding forgiveness. Earning it. Slowly. Patiently. He attended counseling. Ethan attended counseling too. The boy who once blamed me eventually became the young man who accepted responsibility for his actions. 1 year later Ethan stood on a stage receiving an award for community service. Afterward he approached me. Mom. The word caught me off guard. He hadn't called me that in years. Tears filled my eyes. Yeah? Thank you for giving me another chance. I hugged him tightly. Because despite everything, healing had happened. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But genuinely. That winter, exactly 2 years after the night of the storm, snow began falling again. Daniel and I stood outside watching it drift across the yard. The same weather. The same season. But a completely different life. Do you ever think about that night? He asked. Sometimes. And? I watched the snowflakes land softly on the ground. That night changed everything. He nodded sadly. Yes, it did. I looked at him. But not in the way you expected. He frowned. What do you mean? I smiled. Because you thought throwing me into the snow ended my story. I reached for his hand. It was actually the moment I discovered how strong I was. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then Daniel squeezed my hand. And together we watched the snow fall, not as a symbol of betrayal anymore, but as proof that even the coldest winters eventually give way to spring.